So recording is going on. We'll give you the recording afterwards. And W. Edwards Deming, one of our heroes, let's just pay our respect to him. We're going to bring up a few of his quotes during the evening, and one of his quotes is that in God we trust, all others must bring data. So when we get to talking about prediction and so on, don't forget that we're trying to home in on the facts here. And Deming had a few things to say about many things. So one of the things was also management by results, which he wasn't particularly fond of. And he says this is like driving a car by looking in the rearview mirror. You have to be able to forecast, and you have to be able to look forward. In another of his statements is about that. That's in fact what leadership is: being able to have some predictability about the future, being able to tell the signs and see where we are going. And Vibeke and myself will be hosting this evening. The first thing is to just look at the agenda here. Why estimation? What to estimate? Why let teams estimate? A few practical methods, and then some special concerns at the end that sort of hopefully will end up in a cliffhanger that will lure you in to come around in 2 weeks' time for the next part of it. Estimation has in fact received some what we call renewed interest. There's been some discussions after the 2020 Scrum Guide, where there's this statement here. It says Scrum employs an iterative incremental approach to optimize predictability and to control risk. I've actually heard quite a few people say, well, that's new that they put this in. Actually, it's not new. It's been there for 10 years, but nobody's really noticed. It has not traditionally been the thing we talk most about. But there's a renewed interest, and especially maybe because of the COVID situation, everything just highlighting confusion and changes. And here's Deming: management is prediction, he says. He says also about how you build up a theory about things. He says you don't take data for museum purposes. They're data for doing something. If you don't do anything with the data, there's no use in collecting it. It's not fairly obvious, but the ultimate purpose of taking data is to provide a basis for action or recommendation for action. The step intermediate between the collection of data and the action is prediction. So yeah, the claim is here, the classic, we call neo-Taylorist approach of big upfront planning doesn't really work anymore. Plan, delegate, monitor, control, the sort of heart of Prince 2 and other compliance models don't really work because we can't plan anyway. There's simply too much change. So what is estimation? If you look it up in dictionaries and Wikipedia and so on, you get statements like this one here, like establishes a set of plausible properties for an item. It's not a proof really, but it's plausible. And we can look at projects, certain activities and performance, etc. And we do estimation in order to make decisions about it. So it's about making decisions, passing judgment, taking a course of action, etc. And right now here this evening, we'll just talk about how we can estimate certain properties that has to do with projects and products. So we'll talk about cost, effort, monetary costs, with uncertainty, cost of ownership, value, and use a couple of Japanese gentlemen, Professor Kano and Taguchi, in the course of it. And we'll talk about complexity and confidence estimation as well. And these are methods that you can choose to do, to use in your work. Nobody says you have to do it. And in fact, I don't think the Scrum Guide also says anything about that you have to estimate in Scrum. Well, maybe it does say that the developers or the team estimate, but it's not, there's no fixed way of doing it. And of course, a lot of people actually question it and say, well, there's so much variation and confusion and it can't be done anyway, so we we just don't need it. Some of our dearly beloved colleagues, in fact, their estimation cards consist of only 3. And the first one said, this is one reasonable job. 1. The next one, TFB, this is too big, and put in your favorite F word in the middle. And the last one is, I have no clue, put in your favorite F word in the middle. And that's all we can do, they say. Well, it's big confusion anyway, so it's a waste of time trying. I would hope to challenge that a little bit. I think we can do better than that. But it requires, unfortunately, hard work. There is no quick fix here. But first of all, is to remember, why is it important to have an estimation? In Scrum, we talk about product owners, and other times we talk about project leaders or managers, and all of these kind of people have to prioritize and choose a certain direction. They choose to implement this feature or that over that feature, etc. And how could they possibly do that if they have no estimates at all? They're only left with gut feelings, which are notoriously very unprecise and weak. So if we can get estimates of some quality, it's always better than no estimates. If we can improve the quality of estimates, well, we can compete harder. We can either earn more money, we can do more good. If that's our purpose, we can gain market share because we can lower the price, and if we know more precisely where we're going. It's a little bit like driving a car up on mountain roads, and if you are driving a mini or something that is almost like a go-kart, you can sort of put it 2 inches from the edge of the road, and you're still okay. But if you're driving an old wobbly car with rubber bands to the steering wheels, you better stay a reasonable distance away from the limit, and you can't go close to the limits. So the more precise here, the better. Remember, there's another aspect to it also, and that is confidence building or trust building. If you work with customers, or even if you work internally, a team that is able to predict more about its outcome is obviously trusted a lot more than those who say, well, I don't know. The development, it's like art. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. If the spirit come over me, I will code. If it doesn't, I won't. That doesn't help very much. I have actually tried to be a CEO of a company dealing with that sort of developers. That doesn't help you very much. It also gives the team sort of a measuring rod on how are we doing. A lot of you will know the term velocity. How much can we do in a sprint? And if we can improve our capabilities, that number goes up. And that's a good thing. But that requires that we can actually identify our estimates. So what should we estimate? Well, size of work, business value, uncertainty and risk, and perhaps complexity. And who should do it? The people who know best. And that's why we involve the team. Moving forward here, I think you would take over the next one here, Vibeke.
So yes, I'll take you into, can you see my screen, everyone?
Yep.
Great. I'll take you into the world of Mike Cohn. And he has talked a lot about why teams overestimate. If you don't know Mike Cohn, he's a guy who wrote, I think it was back in 2005, he wrote a book, Agile Estimating and Planning, which is definitely worthwhile reading if you are into estimation. It's a very practical guide. What he says is that actually that the best, the best guess for what can be achieved and by when. That's what it is all about. He says that teams overestimate actually because they are overconfident. Team members generally think that they know more about the feature than they really do. If you get into that position, it's an idea to figure out what is really knowledge or what is just assumptions by the team. It can be clarified, of course, through different estimation processes, how the members have understood the feature, and the people, when you estimate the high and the low, is one of the ways we do it, that they have to explain why they estimate like they do and what they see that others in the team might have not seen or know. So what do we really estimate? Less assumptions and more knowledge. The second one he takes up is the lack of clarity about the feature. It's maybe not a lack of knowledge, but it's a lack of clarity from the PO or from the owners in the company, the stakeholders. And of course, they should keep going back to the PO, because the product owner don't usually know everything about the feature. And POs are often seen to sit in the corner and feel that now the team has the job, so I should let the team work. And it takes all too long before the PO sort of look over the shoulder and says, well, yeah, maybe you made what I said you should make, but it wasn't what I wanted. So don't let the PO sit in the corners, or it wasn't what I meant. What you can do is a good remedy to these problems is actually to ask the team members, what percentage of the solution do we really see? And what is meant by pushback, to see if they have reason to feel this confident, is like questions that you ask. What do you know about it? And then please elaborate on it. So don't just take for granted. It can be only hearsay that they have presented. Next one is the estimating a best case scenario. Well, that's what we all do, I think. We often unknowingly estimate the best case for doing the work. They assume that whatever they need, they will get immediately. Of course, they try to do it realistic, but it's their own work they estimate. They're forgetting all the ifs. What if we don't get answers from the PO when we need them? What if specs are changed just a little bit on the way? And what if not all team members are in the house and one gets sick? Are we then vulnerable? And yeah, stuff like that. And there are different methods to make the team better at this. You should ask the team, what has to happen for the estimate to be accurate? And then estimate in ranges, not a fixed estimate. There is another question that I tend to ask, not only what has to happen for the estimate to be accurate, but also what could happen so that it wouldn't. So you really get a clearer picture of the job to be done. The fourth one he's jumping into is the multitasking. Yeah, how often are you really allowed in your job or in your work to focus all your attention to one project or one feature? It does take time to switch. Every time you ask to switch, it takes time. We recently have an electrician who had to change all electricity in a house, and he estimated it would be 60 to 70 hours, and we knew he was a good one, this guy. Unluckily, he was the best. So the problem was actually that he was called all the time from the company. He was very much needed by other people in the company, and they called him asking advice all the time. And almost all days he was called to an emergency situation where he had to leave the premises as well. And I started writing up, when did he actually do actual work? And once the bill came, it was 126 hours and I had 52. So the estimation was in between. But it takes time just getting back to the job where you left and could figure out, where did I leave it and where was I actually at, and so forth. And this is often forgotten in estimation. So jumping up to the time to iterate. Well, iteration. Everyone wants feedback, and it's crucial to get it. We definitely need that. But remember the time when you estimate, that the time to be spent on receiving the feedback and actually acting on it, the new suggestions and implementing changes, even small changes, it does take time. And for example, it says here that when you say you need 8 hours to do it, they often mean the first demo. It's not a finished product. Leading back to what I said before, it's your own work you estimate. So all the rest is forgotten. Then we'll jump into a little bit of repeating here, because not all work is included. It could be a lot of things. It could be database changes. It could be time for the reporting back, or time for the review, or meetings, even daily scrums and stuff like that. Yeah, who's going to pay for that, and who is going to put that into the estimation? Not just the actual work has to be estimated. So this last one is assuming to be more productive than realistic. Well, that's actually leading back to the electricity again. How many hours did you actually produce something? You think you have been working for 8 hours, but you actually maybe only produced something for your task or for your story for 5 hours or 4 hours. So it's not that you haven't been working, but just not on the task that you estimated. So one of the possibilities here is to make checklists. Make checklists when you estimate for bigger stuff and projects, to be sure to ask people, have we included this? Have we included this? Just a checklist, just like the pilot has in the plane, because it's often in a team the same stuff that gives the problems or stirs the shit up. So like Mike Kotmer said, estimating is not about estimation at all, how to do it actually. It's about creating a shared understanding of the requirements and a shared understanding of the solution. Estimation problems, as I see it, it's almost never coming from problems in doing estimation. It's a shared understanding problem that you don't see the same. And that uncertainty should be, of course, assessed, and it will definitely bring benefits to all teams to get these checklists and to be sure and clarify for everyone what are we actually talking about here.
So I'll continue. This Zoom is confusing me here. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about uncertainty, because one of the things that we really need to take into account is to look at the uncertainty of our estimates. So if we here's a traditional project where we have a huge uncertainty in the beginning, and only at the very end can we see what it actually will cost, because we are typically pushing a large portion in front of us of almost done stuff, and we don't know what almost means. If we work the iterative way, Scrum, for example, we absolutely finish something every single sprint, and then we should be able to get to a linear position, or linear falling of uncertainty, because what is done doesn't come back. If we furthermore know about the different features and items and product backlog items, what uncertainty they have, what risk they have, then we can take the risky ones first, and we can get to this kind of the green graph here, which is highly appreciated by stakeholders. So therefore, a recommendation from us: estimate each item with uncertainty. Please include that, and we'll talk about that now. That then you can really use it for something. And when you allow those that estimate to present a range, then you increase their psychological safety. If we have time at the end, I'd like to give you a case story from one of the big banks here who have tried this and experienced a dramatic improvement in their capabilities of prediction. The other thing is that when stakeholders see it all the time, they get used to uncertainty, and they, instead of thinking they can get a primitive number, they understand that they need to look at uncertainty. So we call this team power estimation, and there are many ways. We'll just talk about a few ways in a moment, but you can read these slides afterwards. This is mostly for reading, really, but it's what you do is that when a team estimates and when you get the real benefits of the team, you have some shared references, you have dialogue to raise your understanding, you speak your judgment independently to avoid anchoring bias, you open for discussion, challenging of views, and you try to counter various biases. You have checklists and questions, and you do it a couple of times, and you do it in a range. So these are some characteristics. For this to work, people have to have diversity, that you can't have everybody thinking exactly the same. They have to be independent. Nobody is anybody else's hostage. And they can draw on their knowledge, and we aggregate and we count together, and we eliminate variance that way. Read more about it if you will. Some of the clear benefits is that whatever a team does is typically much, much better than what an individual does. It converges, both in terms of that people agree on it, but also that we mathematically reduce uncertainty. Having the uncertainty is much more close to the real world than just having a single number. So let's look at estimation. We have some agile cards with different ways of estimating. The traditional ways, estimation poker, t-shirts, value estimation, etc. And we'll just look briefly at a little bit on it. Let's just take quickly the traditional estimation or planning poker. I'm sure you know a lot about it, most of you, but these are the traditional numbers we use. And we have some references that are denoted by yellow here. It could, for example, be a small story, we call it a 2, a medium size, we call it a 5, a large one, we call it a 13. Everybody has a deck of cards like that. The PO explains the story, people ask questions, there's dialogue, but no judgment here. And then once it sort of settles down, everyone make their best estimate. Each team member shows his card, we do it again. We do it at the same time to avoid anchoring, because if I've seen Paul's estimate, I'm likely to be influenced by it. And then they give the reason for the estimates. Good practice to be done with the extreme values. And then we do it once more and we go with a majority. So fairly straight out of the box. One of the things that we definitely recommend is just doing it with a range. And that is, whenever you do it, to give your best estimate and then ask the team, try and give your worst case. The best estimate is typically a 50% estimate. It's about equal probability that it might be faster than slower. And then you ask about worst case. This is not a precise mathematical term, but normally it's okay to think about it. That's like a 90% estimate. And that means with 90% certainty, we believe it's not worse than this. So the team will do both of these numbers, and that helps the team reach a statement, because you have a range now. It's not just this one critical number. You can actually give a range, and it's easier, and it helps the product owner quite a lot to see the uncertainty. So you can discover high uncertainty, and that can trigger important discussions. Here's a drawing of how we done it on paper, and here you have sort of an example for estimating sizes, area of countries. Denmark is a reference, that's a 2, and people have then taken best estimate, worst case, and we count it all up, and you see there's this mathematical formula where you take delta square the difference, squared it, add it up, take the square root, add it. And so the estimate of this whole lot here becomes 70, worst case 91. So there is a technique here for aggregating, and that actually lowers the uncertainty when you estimate on the sprint. So this is sort of a great way of doing it. Sometimes you just want to go fast, and you can use the t-shirt estimation then. And so you reduce the amount, it's more coarse, of course, because small normally is taken to mean 2, medium 5, large 13, and then extra large and XXL. And you would actually be surprised if you try it, that if you have a reasonable number of things to estimate, this is almost as good, and it's just a lot faster. Can be done very quickly. So so I'd like you now to send you out in the rooms and just try and do it for a little. It's probably too little time, but we have only an hour tonight. So therefore, I'll send you out in rooms and ask you to try and estimate the price of agricultural raw materials. So here are the raw materials, and we'll do it in t-shirts. So small, medium, large, extra large. Here we have a bunch of different things you can buy on the world market. We have 2 references. Oranges, that's a small price, and it's actually 66 cents per kilogram. Pork is a medium price, it's 1.63. So it's about 2.5 times the size of buying a kilo of oranges. And then please, in your teams, discuss what will bananas, sugar, wheat, and so on be. So once you get out in your rooms, then you go to this slide here, and I'll put in the chat right now a link, and ask each team to select a person that will go into this particular spreadsheet and go to the right tab down here. I hope you see that. So there is a tab for each team. There are 6 teams, 6 breakout rooms. And so breakout room number 1 goes to t-shirts, estimation 1, then 2, 3, 4. And you go into this here and you simply discuss and fill out and say, what do you think bananas is? Well, they could be small perhaps, or maybe they're medium. And then worst case, how much could they cost? Well, it could be like this. And then it constantly counts your number down here. So that's an example of what you can do. Feel free to grab a copy of the spreadsheet if you want to use it for yourself. But for now, I'll just send you into the breakout rooms. But are there any questions here to this way of estimating before we dive in? If you don't really succeed or think that there are more important things to discuss in estimation in your breakout rooms, please feel free to do so. It is only an exercise, but it gives you an idea of what you can achieve with estimating in ranges.
I have to say that my team were excellent, despite the fact that I was the only one in the team that wasn't sick.
Okay. So, all right. Okay. Were there any immediate comments on either the exercise or the discussions you had in the team? Anyone want to contribute?
Yeah, we didn't know enough about, let's say, we would need the product owner, because when you look at, I would say, when you look at the list, that means you can have, I would say, sugar, but that can be white sugar, brown sugar. So
okay,
brown sugar is going to be more expensive than the white one. So this is why you need a product owner to get a better idea of what exactly, which types of sugar is going to be, which type of bananas, which variety of bananas.
Yeah, correct, correct. Unfortunately, those statistics are not really available in detail on the internet. But you're right. Thank you. Yeah. Any other comments?
Well, we were only two in our breakout
Okay.
room, and that made it easy to agree, and
Yeah.
also a weakness in only two perspectives. So maybe we didn't notice this about the sugar. At least I didn't. So
No.
that's a weakness of only being two.
Good. Good. Yeah.
I think we had the same observation that some of these items they can be very inexpensive in some forms, but they can be extremely expensive in others. And because it wasn't very specific, we more or less had to take that into account. And there were also some geographical variations that things that might be less expensive in one country could be more expensive in another. We were three nationalities.
Yeah. That's of course absolutely correct, and again, so I think it highlights some of what Vibeke said, that common models of this are absolutely essential for able to doing. I hope you can still see my screen, and so here are the actual numbers. If you were to use the estimation poker cards for this, you would in fact get very, very close to the real numbers. When you add it up, when you use the course T-shirt kind of thing, there's an error of about 7% or something, and it's not too bad really. So I wanted to do this just to highlight the fact that actually, if you're in a hurry and who is not, you might consider doing the first rough estimates just on the T-shirt sizes. I'll give you a couple of more things. As usual, we probably have planned too much for tonight, but I'll give you a couple of other interesting things that you might consider including in your estimation. Here's Professor Kano, and he adds to the mix here really when you talk about business value, to not just have a number, but also say there are some things that are must-have. There are some things that excite us. There's something that, in fact, are reverse features who would irritate the customers. I think all of us can come up with examples of that. And then there are some things that are simply too small to evaluate and some things that are too big. We have those cards as well. And it has proven for us that it's a great thing to take this into account when you discuss with your stakeholders and get the value side of things in here. So really take this into account and consider using the Kano estimation. One extra thing we would like to add to this is Mr. Taguchi, also a Japanese guy, and he introduced the idea of a loss function. And so when you discuss whether something is okay or not, the usual way was to think of good, no good. So if it's in the interval, then here it's at least the lower specification limit and the upper specification, then we was okay. And he said that's not the real world. The real world is that there is an increase of loss as we move away from the target. And that's a different way of thinking of it. So you might want to consider, for example, his example here with oranges this is the ideal orange in the middle. There the customer is satisfied. He can accept the one, the slightly older orange, that day 7, and then the slightly younger one, day 3. But the day 1 one is clearly unacceptable, and then also the one on day 9 because it's close to end of life. So. But it's an increase of, to think about that in your features also. That's a whole discipline here where you can really get much better at assessing the value. And then as a variation on this, cost of delay. And that is really looking at that all features are not the same. Some are very expensive to delay. We need it right now, and it's very costly if we don't get it, and others can be dealt with later. and I think that's something that we should develop our discipline a bit more in our businesses to look at that. So racing towards the end of what we have tonight, we would bring in a couple of special concerns that are somewhat new in this context here. I'd like to pull in Daniel Kahneman, the psychologist, the king of human error. And he talks about how when we want to assess things, we have some cognitive biases. They are particularly dangerous. I would suggest you read about them and try to understand what we mean by cognitive bias. But it's systematic ways where we systematically, habitually think wrong. So confirmation bias, for example, is one where we only seek information experiments that justify what we already believe. Or substitution bias is where we get a difficult question, but we very quickly, or sometimes subconsciously, replace it with an easier one, and then we answer that one instead. Anchoring and focusing, sunken cost. We tend to think that just because we've sunk so much cost into this, we need to continue doing it. Loss aversion. We react much stronger to a possibility of a loss than a gain. Shared information. People in the group tend to spend too much time on discussing what they already agree on. And we grossly underestimate the time we need to complete our jobs. In fact, the numbers are scary. He quotes that when people say they're 50% done, they're on average only 13% done. When they say they're 75% done, they're on average 19%. When they say 99, on average, they're 45. And these are really scary numbers for anyone who wants to make a plan succeed. So here's one that is particularly difficult to deal with, and that's, he says, that is underneath all of them. He called it "What you see is all there is." WYSIATI, funny abbreviation, but he says we believe strongly that what we have seen is the only things that are to be seen. So we don't even look for more evidence. We have this tendency of believe that what we have seen is all there is to learn about it, and a foundation for many other. So think about the following here, which is also something from him. How do we look at sizes? Do we think one-dimensional, two-dimensional, or three-dimensional? Small, medium, large, there's a factor of 2.5 between each. Do we think like a line, like an area, or like a volume? And his claim is that we actually tend to overlook about half of the third dimension. So there's a systematic error that grows with size. So when we estimate something at a 2, we should probably add 10 to 20%, 3, 20 to 40, etc., etc. And when we get up to the really big numbers, we might be off by as much as a factor of 2 or 3. And that's really scary. And it's a strong argument that we should really focus on breaking things down if at all possible. There's a lot to learn from Kahneman, and in fact on the next webinar we're going to dive into more of this here, and we're going to look at the problem of noise. And here's a new book from him called Noise, and that talks about how we sort of know that that there is variation in judgment because of bias. That's accepted. But noise is something different. Here's an example. If you shoot with a rifle, this is what we want. All the bullets are here close to the center. This is bias. This is systematically wrong. It's offset. Probably something wrong with the orientation of the scope or something. High variance is something different. Either these people are extremely poor shots, or you have an old a crappy rifle that doesn't shoot accurately. This is variation, and here you have both of them. And what he says is part of the problems with our decision making is there's a lot of noise in there, and we attribute the differences to biases, but the noise is there. And in fact, it's even worse that the noise is not systematic. It is by definition random, but it depends on the situation. One of his favorite examples is how he tested with judges, and the sentences that they meted out to the poor criminals, shoplifters and so, were about twice as strong before lunch than after lunch, on average. So if you want to have your case in front of a judge, or you want to have a customer meeting, do it just after lunch. Then people are happy and full, and that influences a lot. In the end, what can we do about it? Just one slide, and then Vibeke will finish off here. There are actually things we can do, and that's what we're going to discuss quite a lot next time. The facilitator, the Scrum Master, can present an outside view to this and try to balance some of these, both the biases and the noise, and ask questions like, what other information could exist? What could throw this solution off the course? I think Vibeke mentioned it before. Have you considered this and that? Being an outside observer gives you that opportunity. Look at potential biases. I wonder why this new information did not make you change more. Or help me understand, I think we just simplified the issue too much here. Is it time to stop going in this direction? If you're in a hole, stop digging. The outside facilitator, and that's actually one of the recommendations from Kahneman, one of the things you can do to try and help yourself make better judgments. You can do the ritual descent exercise, assign someone to criticize the living daylight out of your solution. That's nasty, but it works. Attack the noise problem. Show people that noise is there. Train, and train again, and have another reference group, perhaps. Group dynamics. Sometimes the group can really be, the social pressure in the group can be something that all of a sudden can skew the observations. These are all very interesting, but we don't get in detail right now. But it's a new field that has been opened up here, and I think there's a lot of things to improve here, a lot of things we can investigate further. The whole problem of noise in decision making. So I think I'll leave it with that and let Vibeke round it off here. I'm sorry for taking too much time again.
It's only a few minutes this time, but just rounding off by telling you who we are, that we are this smaller business located in Vejle in Denmark and also Norway. And we have an international outlook and a big vision. Our vision is generally we want to help people and organizations to get more out of their efforts. And we do that by supporting the entire agile journey. So we deliver both courses and consultancy and tools that support that organizational agility. We deliver Scrum Master and Product Owner courses, and also courses in Agile Lean Leadership. Courses in Agile Lean Leadership specifically is the new leg in our house. We deliver both physical courses and also online courses. And then we have the red one you see there, the Agemba, the tool. We have a new workflow tool used by both Scrum teams and non-Scrum teams. And it especially caters to the needs of product owners and others in similar roles of strategic decision-making. So I just want to tell you here tonight that you can go to our shop and get a free Agemba trial to try it out if you want. And I just want to stress the next slide, Kurt, that this is a teaser for the next one where we will go deeper in the estimation and really get some tips and tools to get it done. So all left to say is thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for coming tonight. it has been, you've been good listeners. Thank you very much.
So we'll hang around for a while if there are anybody who has some questions and further details, and we'll send up the PDF and the recording